Hello everyone, I'm Craig A. Woodward.
And I'm James A. Moores.
I'm the Idiot, and he's the Bohemian, and even if this is your first time here, welcome back to the Broken Quill. Our topic today is hardcore versus softcore magic systems in fantasy. Now, don't let the title fool you, this won't be some useless debate on which one is better versus which one is worse. They both have their pros and cons and expected uses, and that's what we're going to explore. Firstly, James, as a sci-fi writer, I'm interested in your view first. What does a soft or hard magic system mean to you in fantasy, and how much experience do you have with either?
Well, I have a little experience reading fantasy, but it's all just magic to me. I hear lots of people online simply declare that hardcore is superior and that softcore is simply a means to cover up plot holes. As for systems, I know one has rules and the other apparently doesn't. Something like that?
Oh, yes, that's the absolute basics. It's essentially the same as sci-fi, but with a single caveat, maybe. Hard sci-fi, to my very limited understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong on this, but the general thought is simply no magic boxes. You don't get any Heisenberg compensators or special fuel for the engines that just happens to go past light speed, but in hard magic you are in fact allowed a magic box. And I don't mean a literal magic box, I mean in the same sense. You are allowed one thing that just dismisses a criticism, the fact that magic exists at all and can be used. That is the magic box. Magic is a thing. The hardcore aspect of the writing is in how that magic can be used, the rules of its uses, and how strict, restrictive, or organic those rules are.
Don't fantasy-splain hardcore sci-fi to me.
I did ask you to say if I'm wrong.
You're wrong, but not totally off the mark. Hardcore sci-fi has a place in more of a futurism and a speculative fiction. It is about trying to figure out what we as a species is actually capable of, trying to tease out the real and true future of humankind. Star Wars is not our future, being as it is set in the past, but neither is Star Trek. Speculative fiction asks the question, what could actually happen in our future? Whereas softcore sci-fi is more about telling stories, about investigating ideas and playing out enjoyable scenarios. Hardcore can do that too, but the focus is on the science. It's what the readers come here for. And that's the part you're basically hitting without hitting. The concept of hardcore sci-fi is no compromises. It's real. You can't add anything, you can't invent anything that cannot be built in the real world. The problem with Star Trek's transporters is, as you said, the Heisenberg uncertainty principle, a mathematical law that basically says there is an inherent fundamental limit to the precision of any math equation. And because you need to be very, very precise for a teleporter to work, it can't work. So Star Trek inserts a magic box, a device which says this stops Heisenberg. But there's no way to build that in the real world. You can't simply have a box which changes the fundamental principles of the universe in hardcore. But we have a lot of veneers lately, such as Expanse series and its space zombies and spore monsters, but near realistic spaceflight. But I digress. Yes, hardcore sci-fi requires you to stick to the rules, but, Prince Mushkin, I've often heard you fantasy writers go back and forth on what exactly is a hardcore magic system, so can you break that down a little?
My apologies, then. I beg your forgiveness, O wise sci-fi master.
I will consult the Lords of Arrakis and get back to you.
The spice must flow. Anyway, hardcore magic is interesting, and I'm about to say something that actually contradicts what I said before about hard magic only having one caveat, because it actually gets as many as it likes. You see, hard magic systems are very unique as far as fictional elements that can be placed into a hard or soft setting go. You see, a hard magic system doesn't actually need to be explained in the way that people think. For example, a hard magic system requires two singular tenets. One, it has rules. Two, it keeps to them. Now those rules themselves can actually be whatever they like. They can be arbitrary, some complicated facet, organic, or just a divine will. They're like the rules of a Disney genie's wishes. Genie magic is by definition softcore, but the rules are also arbitrary. Can't bring back the dead. Why? can't make someone fall in love. Why? It doesn't matter. If you have a hard magic system that says it can't affect living people, you don't actually need to explain why it can't do that, as long as it's consistently can't. The moment you break that rule and allow it to directly affect living people, you no longer follow the rules and you're immediately a softcore magic system instead, just with maybe a hard veneer. This adds a lot of freedom to hard magic systems to still be as creative as people like, and it also allows for a lot of softcore to have wonderfully strong veneers of hardcore. For example, Full Metal Alchemist is a softcore system, but it has a very thick veneer of hardcore. The Philosopher's Stone does not break the system, it still requires equal resource exchange. The Source Stone just acts like a chest full of resource. Sorry for the spoilers, guys, but souls to be precise. However, there's not really any decent explanation behind the growth of a great evil trying to become akin to God, the giant form he takes at the end as he reaches towards the Eye of Truth. There's no explanation behind that, but we've seen such crazy things up until that point that we just don't question it. But the rules of alchemy, and even how truth operates, is very good indeed, and from what I can see, one of the thickest hard veneers of a softcore system I've ever seen. It deserves immense praise. So, hardcore systems, or hard veneers, allow for an immense level of creativity, and sometimes trying to differentiate between the softcore and the hardcore isn't actually as easy as people think because of this.
Well, then what's the point? It sounds more like it's about whether or not you want to explain your magic system. If you don't explain it, how is anyone to know you're actually breaking a rule? I mean, I hear this about the Wheel of Time. It's a hardcore magic system, but spoilers again. In the ending, the main character weaves a new spell and it allows him to win. People point to that and say that it breaks its rules and it's therefore a softcore magic system. I mean, to me, the rule is you can weave magic and thus weave spells. I don't see how weaving a new spell fundamentally breaks any rules, but lots of people say it does. Also, if the rule of Gandalf is he's basically a god, how and when does he ever break those specific rules? I guess, as a sci-fi writer, where the two distinctions are very exacting and unflinching, I don't see the difference between yours.
Well pointed out. Now, this may be a personal interpretation, but I think I have a system that should help identify any hardcore system and knock down any softcore system. It's the Inspector system. So, in a mystery novel, a mystery inspector novel, most of the time it's not necessarily the mystery that's the draw, at least to my understanding, it's the challenge to the reader, to follow the inspector as he finds the clues, and for the reader to have the same clues and try to figure out who the murderer is before the inspector can. It's a race between the inspector and the reader. In my eyes, a similar analogy can be applied to hardcore magic systems. If your reader, by the end of the book, understands the magic system enough to be able to correctly weave the system themselves, it's hardcore. For example, I haven't read Wheel of Time, but I wonder if the readers of it would be able to talk to me about spells they themselves have figured out how to weave via the system, that would be perfectly justified by the rules and systems within the book. Are the readers given enough information for that? I mean, theoretically, you can do that for something like Full Metal Alchemist, but once again, I doubt you could use the system to become a god. But can you say, learn the Wheel of Time system and using your own system weave together a spell that allows for bodily flight? Is that a possibility? Are the audiences aware of any pitfalls in such a weave, or any reasons why that wouldn't work? If you have a character in your story that uses magic, by the absolute end of your entire book or series of books, the mark of a great hardcore magic system, in my own eyes, is one that the readers now understand just as well as the character. And if they were in such a world, could do the same things through their understanding. It gives the reader license to their own creativity, to explore the magic outside of the contents of the pages. If your system's explanations behind the magic are so vague as to not allow for that kind of working, then I feel it's a hard veneer, maybe, but essentially softcore.
So why use one over the other?
Well, there's a myriad of reasons. It could be artistic decision or author's whim, or could be the writer isn't good at working out the technicals needed to make a hard system work, but there are a few other story reasons and thematic reasons to use one over the other. Lord of the Rings, for example, uses a soft magic system to inspire awe and fear of magic on the good side and the bad side. It uses it as something that cannot be overcome by our small hobbits, and it focuses on the hobbits' relationships, allowing their naive struggle against such overwhelming powers to be the focus of the adventure. The reader isn't bogged down with all the details of a magic system, because they don't need to be. Tolkien has more important things to bog the reader down with, like the backstory of literally everything else. I jest, but what I'm trying to say is that a softcore magic system allows for a sense of awe, mystery, and creativity, and foreboding to really be buried deep within the system. It's really good if your main character can't use magic. It allows them to face odds which normally one could never face. It makes any adventure of any size suddenly feel like a massive undertaking. It's truly effective in this, but a hard magic system, this is wonderful for lore building, world building, and character building. It doesn't help with the character relationship building. I'd say soft magic is better for that, but that's probably just my opinion. But hard magic is wonderful for a timid character to use as a tool to become stronger, as they learn through strength of will and dedication. You have them rise stronger and stronger until their timidness is replaced by a well of strength that they've truly earned, and the reader now feels they've earned alongside said character. It may just come down to author's choice, but there definitely seems to be ways that either one directly affects how the reader identifies and interacts with the work that you are writing. So, an author might choose to use one or the other based on this understanding and how they want their book to be approached.
Well, what would you say about the current rhetoric that hardcore magic is just better? That softcore is a way of hiding plot holes, that it inherently creates problems in the writing simply by the fact of its existence?
I'd say they need to go back and read Tolkien again, or Narnia, or any of the classic greats. I'd say they should probably also consider going back to school, but maybe that's too mean? Well, neither hard nor soft is better. One or the other might be better for singular books, though. For example, let's talk Harry Potter. Harry Potter is about as softcore as you can get, and it certainly breaks what few rules it tries to establish, but would we feel better about the story if we actually got to sit with Harry throughout all of his classes? So they could be used as an exposition dump to the reader and the intricacies and histories of the magic system? I mean, I'd read that, but I doubt many others would really want to. A soft magic system can help tighten the focus of the story, tighten the adventure, and allow the parts the author wants to show off to truly shine. Yes, softcore can and does have a habit of creating plot holes, but that is more of the author's fault than the system's fault. Let's attempt a sci-fi analogy that I'm sure you'll tell me I'm wrong about in reply. I'd say it's like an attempted hardcore novel failing at being hardcore because the individual's math is sadly wrong in the equation. They tried their best, but it was wrong. It sort of spoils the pot. That's not a problem with the plot or the book or the reader or anything. It's the problem lies between the pen and the chair. The author hasn't thought through what they are doing enough. They haven't worked it out in their head. Just because you're softcore doesn't mean you can do literally anything you want. I mean you can, but it doesn't mean it'll be good. Even softcore magic systems take a modicum of effort.
You're wrong in the reply. Why do you keep going to sci-fi?
Because, as a strange dichotomy to my writing genre, I'm very uncreative.
I don't know what you're talking about, Prince Mushkin. I would say that a writer who got the math wrong may be getting it wrong for a few different reasons. And if their attempt is specifically the writing of hardcore science fiction, then it could be completely out of their control. Say you wrote a novel about black holes, maybe you had them as a portal into a different universe or a different part of space. This was once believed to be possible. It was called the white hole theory, so at the time it was hardcore, but then Stephen Hawking came along and suddenly it's not anymore. Also, it might just be poor knowledge. Maybe they don't know the math. Maybe they think something is a hard and fast mathematical or scientific theory, and it's just not. So in these cases, it's not the writer's fault. But what you seem to be pointing to is specifically that they can't be bothered to follow their own rules. Is that correct?
Softcore magic systems, as I've said, allow you to focus on plot and story above anything else without it being weighed down by said complicated rules. But therein lies the problem. A lot of writers get so caught up in their own plot that suddenly when they need something to happen and they can't write their way around it, boom! Wizard did it. They use the magic less as an aspect of the story in said cases and more as a deus ex machina. It just becomes a tool. An example of this is, sorry to go back to Harry Potter here, but Fantastic Beasts, the movie, the first one, the prequel of the Harry Potter series. You have this massive climactic battle and immense devastation on the city, and how do they keep it under wraps? They all just wave their wands and the entire city magically repairs itself. How are they able to get away with this monumental feat? Well, there's no rules to the Harry Potter system, so why not? It takes away the consequence and the drama of the damage and the worry that muggles could find out. A quick obliviate spell and a flick and a swish and suddenly the city is fine. Muggles none the wiser, bad guy in custody, happy endings. It saps the weight of what is otherwise not a bad film. So yes, often it's writer laziness, I'm afraid. Soft magic systems are good, brilliant, fantastical, and so useful, and I love them as much as hardcore magic systems, but they do require a little effort, a few basic rules or limitations, or perhaps, at the absolute minimum, some consistency.
I think I'll leave the fantasy to you.
That seems fair. Well, I hope my rant and vague shade at some notable authors has interested you, or at least angered you enough to leave me a rage-induced comment below. Comment on this video. Like, share, hit the bell. This was The Broken Quill. I'm Craig A. Woodward.
And I'm James A. Moores.
And we look forward to seeing you here again.